Welcome back to the preview show. Of course, I'm Casey Campbell. That is Jonathan Field down at the bottom from the Racing Experts, coming to you from the KWB conference room. The guy on my left, I just can't appreciate having someone of Rob Tiongson stature. Who's Rob Tiongson for the podium finishes here? It is just an absolute honor to have you on our show tonight. So I'd like to thank you, Rob, for coming on tonight.
My pleasure, Casey. Good to be here. And Jonathan, great to finally see you face to face.
Yeah, and you could always reach the top of the podium at the podium finish. So remember that.
That's right. That's why we're TPF. Basically the podium finish, which is the perfect. I don't know what the F word would be. Let's keep it appropriate, though.
That word is 6 letters, no 4.
I don't know. I don't math.
Okay. All right. We'll end that there. Okay. So we got some burning stories to talk about. We got some headlines. Kind of tested them out. Yeah, Rob and I did, but Rob knows what I'm about to ask. But let's ask you, and I'll ask. All right, Rob, give me two headlines from the Cup race, and then after that, Jonathan, give me some headlines from the Xfinity race.
All right, so Casey, in terms of the Cup race, the two headlines that really stood out to me was the fact that old guys prevailed at Richmond Raceway, because for the past 12 Cup races, of course, it was drivers under the age of 30 who were winning races. So ironically, Denny Hamlin snaps, but he was the book-ended driver with that streak. But like I said, off channel, it's like the Nintendo Entertainment System players finally won a race because all the Nintendo Switch gamers were just like dominating in NASCAR. And I was starting to wonder, like, great, is this the end of the old guys winning races? Because like I'm in between the millennials and like the old people, if you will. So seeing Denny Hamlin win, I guess he just wanted to deliver really nicely with a top 10 finish by getting his first win of the year. And so I think those who were hitting the panic button with the number 11 team, I think it was just a little bit premature, but good to see him get a win. And the second storyline really that stood out to me, it's kind of odd saying this, but Kyle Larson getting a top 5 finish is like, it's pretty noteworthy, just because he's been through a really rough free race skid. He was ringing the top 5 at Phoenix, of course, probably the best Chevrolet during that day when Stewart-Haas Racing, the Fords were really doing a great job in Phoenix before his engine blew up. And then at Atlanta, he overcame a situation where he got into an accident, ran into towards the lead before a bum trap that went wrong with Denny Hamlin sent him out of the race. And then at Coda, I still kind of question the fact as to why Cliff Daniels made him go to pit road with 13 to go, running in the top 10, and he ends up getting in the back crash in Calamity Corner. So the defending Cup champion getting a top 5 and going up to 12th place in points is really huge, because I seem to remember him coming back from a really bad deficit and then obviously winning the championship. So are we seeing a repeat of that? Time will tell.
Mm-hmm. And talking about the NASCAR Cup Series race, we also saw the strategies play out with Martin Truex Jr. and William Byron being moved aside by Denny Hamlin and Kevin Harvick, who, of course, pitted late in the race. Truex, Byron did not. You rarely see top teams make a mistake with strategies and lose a race like that, but we saw that with Truex and Byron. They even came over the radio and said, hey, we messed up. We didn't do this right. They beat us. They got beat. And of course, the old guys prevailed. I thought the strategies were a lot of fun to watch too, because that's been an element that's come into play where Richmond's become maybe a little more tamer with the racing. Not as much of the beating and banging as it used to be. I have a lot of fun watching it, just being who I am and watching racing, and it's interesting to see. But you were talking about the old guys prevailing. In the Xfinity Series, though, it was the young guys who pulled off a great run. I mean, John Hunter Nemechek, Ty Gibbs, they led all but one lap. The only other lap that was not led by them was by a guy who was older, but it was Josh Berry, who's relatively young to the series. Great performance by Ty Gibbs. Great performance by John Hunter Nemechek, how he was able to stalk Ty Gibbs, cool the tires throughout the whole run, not cook them, mount a charge at the end, and then Ty Gibbs, a lot of people, he drew controversy from a lot of different people, but I think this is just his way of continuing to get better, continuing to learn. When he gets to the Cup Series, he'll learn some lessons, he'll learn some things once he gets to that point. But right now, he's just learning how to close out races, how to win, and how to just have as much success as he can. And it's fun to watch. Another storyline from the race, also Parker Retzlaff, just once again going out and having a great run, getting the finish this time around. Because Phoenix, he had a really good qualifying effort, really good run. Had some pit road woes had some pit road woes this time, but came from 22nd to 10th in the final 90 laps in an RSS racing car, not even the 39 car, but the 38. Uh, I'm blown away by him. He's gonna be so much fun to watch. It's gonna be fun to watch Rajah Caruth and Derek Griffith, who finished 24th and 26th respectively in their debuts. Good, solid debuts for each of them. But man, Parker Retzlaff, he is somebody who I'm very excited for right now.
And of course, theme with you as Wisconsin drivers. Of course, you got a chance to talk to one of them today. We'll get into that a little bit. But yeah, of course, Parker did. Well, you'll see Parker Retzlaff on my channel sometime next week, I think. We're still trying to work out the lines. Of course, he'll be in Martinsville this weekend racing in the Xfinity Series for Ryan Seagrave for RSS. And as you mentioned, Derek Griffith will also be racing there. Rajah will be back in a few weeks as well. All right. It's time for everyone's favorite segment on this show. No, that comes later, but now it's time for the fun segment where I get to hit these two with, I haven't played this yet with two people, but it's time for Gas and Go. Jonathan knows how this works. I'm going to hit you guys with a bunch of topics, and you're just going to give me a bunch of opinions on there. Let's start off with our very special guest, because you know all guests are special. Yeah. All right, Rob. There's some Cup topics, Xfinity topics, truck topics, and just other random topics that are on there. The NASCAR Hall of Fame, and Jonathan, you can chime in on this as well. I'll ask you the same question, actually. But I'll give you 30 seconds. Give me your, I don't know if you read the Hall, I should mention the people that are in the Hall of Fame ballot actually first. But the NASCAR Hall of Fame 2023 class came in and helped me out here if I miss anybody else. Of course, Matt Kenseth is on the ballot in the modern era category. Of course, Harry High. I think I got that right. Yeah, Harry Hyde, I think, is on there. Harry Gant is on there. So it's a lot of talent. Carl Edwards, Jeff Burton are some of the guys on there. And, of course, the Pioneer ballot has about 5 drivers. That includes guys like Sam Ard, of course, a legend in what is now the Xfinity Series, and as well as A.J. Foyt. So and also the Landmark Award nominees were also on. So I'll start with you, Rob. Who are you voting for who is on? If you got a chance to vote, who would be on your ballot for the Hall of Fame? Remember, 2 modern, 1 pioneer from there, and you can look at the ballot to see who's on.
Go for the Landmark Award too.
Well, this won't take me too long to decide on, just because I've been feeling this way about this ballot since the pandemic. So to me, you have to have Mr. September on there. I'm talking, of course, Harry Gant, of course, number 33, Skull Bandit car. That streak he went on in 1991, that was the first season I ever watched NASCAR, and that was really amazing to see as a kid. But besides the point, an older driver who's excelled so well, just imagine if he was in Cup younger, he would have been such a great talent. Really after that, Carl Edwards, I think, should be there. I know people are like, well, he never won a Cup championship, but you also have to think about his amazing numbers in the Xfinity Series. So I would actually vote him in the modern era category. And as far as the Pioneers are concerned, I think it's pretty easy to say Sam Ard. I mean, Mr. Xfinity to me, in terms of that series, before it became what we know today. So those would be my 3 drivers for sure.
Yeah, it's tough. Matt left Matt Kenseth off. That's an interesting one. So we'll have to see how the committee goes. All right, Jonathan, who would you put on your ballot? And it's the question I asked in our group chat. Who would you have on your ballot?
Yeah, so of course from the modern era, Matt Kenseth, Tim Brewer, Neil Bonnet, Jeff Burton, Carl Edwards, Harry Gant, Harry Hyde, Larry Phillips, Ricky Rudd, and Kirk Shelmerdine to choose from. And out of those guys, I would choose Kirk Shelmerdine as my first pick because, of course, many of us know him as the driver of the 72, the 27, doing his independent team. But back in the day, of course, he was a four-time champion as a crew chief with Dale Earnhardt. He won most of Dale Earnhardt's wins came with Kirk Shelmerdine, so he contributed a lot to the greatness of who Dale Earnhardt was, and I think he more than deserves to go in the Hall of Fame. I think it's almost kind of a crime that he isn't in the Hall of Fame already. From the modern era, I I know it's kind of cliche, but I have to agree with Matt Kenseth. You know, he's one of the only Cup champions who's not in the Hall of Fame yet. Besides the ones who are active right now, just like with Jeff Gordon and Tony Stewart, I think he gets in the first go of it, gets in the Hall of Fame from the modern era ballot. From the Pioneer ballot, of course, you have AJ Floyd, Sam Ard, Banjo Matthews, Herschel McGriff, and Ralph Moody. Out of those five, I think Ralph Moody would be a great pick for the Hall of Fame, just considering what he did for the sport back in its early days where factory support was a huge thing. Holman Moody was a household name. I think Ralph Moody would be a great person to see go in the Hall of Fame. And I'll I'll even go for the landmark award. I'll throw that out there. I think Lisa Franz Kennedy would be someone cool to see get that award. But Janet Guthrie, though, and just everything she accomplished and broke barriers for women in the sport, would be great to see her honored in that way.
For sure. And of course, next year, if you're on the modern era ballot, you may want to get in this year because me and Chad are up next year. And it looks like those two are both getting in together. So,
ooh, yeah.
I kind of like that nostalgic thing there. So, remember the Hall of Fame was established now with the new way they're doing this. It's, you know, I think I know that 5 members and everybody got in. They had to get everybody in. So now even maybe it's now harder. Now that a lot of the big names are in, it's trying to see who else can get in as well. Because right after Matt Kenseth and right after Jimmy and Chad, they're really, obviously, like from like the big era. Of course, they're going to get some when, Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, Kurt Busch, all those guys, Keselowski, and then down the line. So, yeah, Hall of Fame's going to have some good ones going at least in the next decade. So, yeah.
And to that point, too, I think it's good because it really shares about NASCAR history because there's a lot of great drivers from the 50s and 60s who don't really get talked about as much as they should. For example, Herb Thomas, who won 48 races, was NASCAR's first 2-time champion. He still holds the record for the highest winning percentage of any driver in NASCAR history. Doesn't really get talked about much, but these ceremonies really give that opportunity. I think that's so important.
All right. Okay, now we're actually. I know I did want to get a segment in on the Hall of Fame, so thanks for doing that. But now it's time to really get into gas.
I forgot we were doing that. We got so into that.
Yeah, I knew we had to have a discussion about, with the Hall of Fame. Let's start with you, Rob. Let's start with trucks. Zane Smith, you got a chance to ask him some questions yesterday in a media call with put on by our good friends at Ford. Do you think that Zane Smith is the contender, is the favorite for the truck championship as of right now? Go.
I think so. I honestly think that Zane Smith is probably the contender right now because he's obviously shown that he can win in any kind of racetrack. He won at Martinsville last year, of course, with GMS Racing to even be in the championship 4. And then, of course, to kick off the season with his brand new team with Front Row Motorsports, won a really wild truck race at Daytona. And then really, he could have won a few other races in between, but unfortunately, had the situation at Las Vegas that, negated that finish, of course. And then at Atlanta, I think he got a top 5 finish there. And then at COTA, the race I covered as well, he just really looked really comfortable up there, took advantage of a situation where, some of the leaders got a little bit greedy getting into that long back straightaway. And he's like, yep, this is mine to win. And I think he has to feel mighty extra crispy confident, as I say, about his chances this on Thursday night in the truck race because he knows how to get around Martinsville. He did say in the media conference he doesn't know if it's going to be as intense now that the truck race is now in the spring, but then he also said, I might screw up on that prediction and it might be 20 times wilder. So if anyone can handle that racetrack, it's going to be Zane Smith. And as far as the championship for the truck series, I'm pegging him to win it all.
Oh, yeah, for sure. All right, Jonathan, you're up. Well, we're going to go to Cup now. Most improved, you think? What biggest surprise and biggest disappointment?
Most improved, I would say, is probably Ross Chastain definitely ranks up there as most improved. Because last season kind of got off to a slow start with the season, had some good runs, but nowhere near what he's been able to do this season. I think he's been very improved. Stewart-Haas Racing, though, I think has been top of the stack when it comes to improved because you have Harvick in 8th, Briscoe in 9th, Almirola in 11th. I think Stewart-Haas Racing, most improved. Chastain's your surprise there.
Yeah. All right. Now we're going to go to you, back to you, Rob. This time we're going to talk Xfinity. Biggest surprise of the Xfinity season from you, Rob. Go.
I hope I am not dissing on him, but Landon Castle has been a surprise. And I don't mean that in a really good way, but I think there's a chance for him to really improve upon things. He's got a good crew chief, of course, in Jason Trincheri, who got to the championship 4 with AJ Allmendinger. But to be fair, I kind of expected a little bit more out of him to start the season. But, I can't really fault him for what happened at Fontana, of course, the engine failure. But at this point, I kind of thought he'd have a couple of top 5s, maybe even flirt with a win, but it seems like maybe he's just getting used to driving in top tier equipment after years of trying to drive these, mid-tier at best type of race cars where he had to overcompensate for the cars to even get a good finish. So I'm a little bit surprised by the fact he's struggling a little bit with colleague racing, but then again, I think AJ Allmendinger might be overshadowing both him and defending Xfinity champion Daniel Hemrick just because the 11 and 10 don't seem to have the speed or that gusto to really be strong, whereas AJ Allmendinger is just like, I'm just going to be disappointed about getting top 10 finishes and leaving the point standings.
Yeah, for sure. All right. We did Cup, we did Xfinity. Jonathan, back to you. Biggest surprise in trucks this year?
I think the biggest surprise has been Tanner Gray. He's done really well this season. Last season just seemed to lack performance. It's been great to see how he's done. You guys alluded to him, Zane Smith. If it wasn't for his disqualification at Las Vegas, he'd have something like a 2.3 average finish on the season. He's been fantastic. Also, Chandler Smith as well, leading the points. He's had some good finishes. Has looked like consistently the best truck out there, right up there with Zane Smith. I think those 3 have been some good surprises. They've been fun to watch this season.
Yeah, for sure. All right, one last round of gas and go before we get to our favorite segment, the picks. Rob, this one's to you, and this is an Xfinity question. How many wins do you think Ty Gibbs gets in 2022? Go.
That is a really, really spicy question to ask me, Casey. But I'll give you a prediction because you asked me for one. I'm going to say he wins 11 races this year. I'm that confident because we saw how strong he was in ARCA. Now, given, of course, ARCA, it's not as, personalized, I guess, as the Xfinity series because it's all across the board, a spec series at this at its point in its stage. Whereas Ty Gibbs in the Xfinity series, man, he just looks so dominant, so comfortable. I know he's roughing up some people on the racetrack, but, I think that's what you have to be in today's NASCAR. You cannot lay back and just be Mr. Nice Guy. It's all about trying to be another Kyle Busch. Why do you think he's been so successful in the Cup Series? He doesn't care so much about roughing people up. He just wants to win for his team, for himself. And Ty Gibbs possesses a lot of that Kyle Busch swagger that, I think we're going to miss from Kyle Busch when he does retire eventually down the road. But we'll get it back at Ty Gibbs.
Casey, I said 9 last week. I want to amend that and do one better than Rob. I want to say 12.
I mean, we're getting up to that 13. We're getting up to that 13, as I always like to say. which I've been saying all season long. But yeah, and of course, this is really, I think, kind of also the first complete race that this team's had. If you've watched, Chris Gale was on my channel last week, a couple weeks ago, and he was a great guest. Talked about Ty's development, how they've meshed together and all that. And at the time, he didn't feel like they had a complete race yet. And I feel like this is the closest that they've had to that, which is, I think, dangerous for the rest of the field. For sure. I think that, and he didn't even lead the most laps that day too. So
easily he's gonna rack up so many laps led. I think he might even challenge whatever that record may be. If Ashley Hobbs is watching this, comment on Casey's YouTube channel. I don't know numbers, that's why you're on TPF on my team.
Love the teamwork.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. All right. Last one is to you, Jonathan. Who is your favorite for the Cup Championship right now?
Ooh, that's a tough one. But if I had to pick one driver in particular, I would say Ryan Blaney. They've had early season success before, and I do think they need to get better with their speed throughout the race. But just having this stronger performance and being this consistent and scoring as many stage points as they have, because that's an early indicator for who's going to do well in the season, who's going to win the championship. Ryan Blaney is probably my favorite. Put William Byron up there too. He's been really strong.
That's good stuff. That'll do it for this week's Gas and Go. Gas is expensive, so we got to go.
There we go.
That's how that works. All right. It's time for our favorite segment of this show. Jonathan, what do you know what time it is?
It is time for the picks.
It is time for the picks. And by the way, yes, thank you. By the way, in our preview show pick standings, your TPF co-host Nathan Solomon is in the lead for the first time this season. Yeah. You know how competitive he is. He's of course, Jonathan and I think Martin. It's a close battle between Nathan, Jonathan, and Marty right now. Up in the standings. I'm kind of behind, not as behind as RJ is, but it's up there. And of course, Mitchell and Loomis are they're mid pack. I'm right there too. So it's a very, very tight battle. We get 3 races this weekend: Trucks, Xfinity, and Cup. We pick all 3 as we usually do every week. Let's start with Trucks, and let's start with our special guest, Rob Tiongson. Who you got this weekend?
Well, this is going to be such an original choice right here, and I had to really think hard about this. Zane Smith for the truck race.
There you go. Well, my guy who I had picked to win, he won a race here before to get into the championship 4, and I think he's going to do it on normal terms. Grant Enfinger, GMS really needs a good run. Grant Enfinger is a good driver. I think he gets it done this weekend.
Yeah, the GMS and the GMS affiliated trucks have not had a good year so far. I know Matt DiBenedetto had a good start to the season. He's really kind of the only one that's had some success. I know Grant and Jack have been putting some good runs together. I think Grant got his first top 10 at COTA, so that's good. And then you look at those 2 trucks, the BMR trucks have been up there. And don't even get me started with Lane. Oh boy, he has not had the start to this. He's probably been the most unluckiest driver in the truck series so far. Hopefully that team finds some luck this weekend at Martinsville. But my pick, I gotta agree with Rob. I'm gonna take Zane Smith this weekend. And by the way, none of us in the championship standings have Zane Smith, so I will gladly take that. So yeah, it's that 38 team has been automatic. They picked up right where they left off when Todd was there, and Chris Lawson and that team have really has got a good thing going right now. Front row is having some fun over there. All right, let's pick the Xfinity race. I think it's one of the call 811 before you dig, and very important by the way.
250.
Yeah, the call, yes. Yeah, a lot of numbers in there. But make sure if you're gonna dig, make sure you call the number so they remove all the lines. So very, very, very important. Let's start with Jonathan this time.
Well, this pick I feel 200,000% sure on, or should I say $200,000 I will be betting on, and that he will walk away $100,000 richer with $200,000 at the end of the night. Talked to him earlier this week, and that's not the reason I'm picking him. Sam Mayer, he had a really good run back in October at this race, came back from multiple laps down after he had a busted radiator. Good equipment, good driver, short track racer. Sam Mayer gets it done. Riding a great wave of momentum, too.
Yeah, it comes from that pipeline in Wisconsin. Obviously, as you know, Sam Mayer and I have known each other for a long time. He's a friend of the channel, and he's had some really good success so far in the last few weeks. And actually, before the third place finish last week at Richmond, he was actually in that Martinsville race where he got his best career finish in fourth. So yeah, it's there's a new number one in town, I guess. I don't know. Rob Tiongson, who you got?
It's a really tough one because I had to think between three different drivers, of course. AJ Allmendinger, and then of course say Josh Berry, who I'm surprised. I was expecting Jonathan to say Josh Berry, but I'm gonna stick with the JRM camp and go with Noah Grigson because I was really impressed with how mature he was driving in that race last year to even get to the championship four, and he just has this really quiet swagger about him this year. I mean, not to say that he's still not going to be a wild rock star, or as he says, beat to a different drum as I talk to him at Coda, but I certainly think him and Luke Lambert, they've got something really good going on. We know how well they were running at a flat track like Phoenix, so I look for that to carry over in another grandfather clock for number 9.
All right. I'm going to stick with Chevy, but I'm not going to stick with JRM. I'm going to take AJ Allmendinger. I feel like the 16 team has really got it going on, and he's going to get another win for the men and women at college. So, as I've said, yeah, we know Ty Gibbs is pretty good, but it's just the Chevys in numbers. If they can really have a good weekend, I feel like they can really do that. But you're going to have to get by that 54 to get it done.
Now, here's the shocker. Casey did not say stick with the Gibbs this week.
Yeah, if you're a fellow preview show watcher, that is one of my sayings this year. But yeah, we'll have to see. Plus, I think so. Yeah, good there. All right, time for the Cup Series, the Blue Emu Maximum Pain Relief 400 at the Martinsville Speedway. Get your hot dogs out. Let's go with the man who reaches the top of the podium, Rob Tiongson.
All right, so first of all, I gotta say I'm still pretty sad that Martinsville Spring Race is now 400 laps long. Don't get it, don't know why, don't really want to digress on that too much because I'm a little bit sad about that. But to get my emotions collected, I'm gonna go with Ryan Blaney just because Jonathan really pointed out the reasons why I think he's going to be a championship contender. Wholeheartedly agree, by the way. And if we're going to see him being a championship contender, you've got to do well in those short tracks. They're going to be in the playoff rotation this year. So if Ryan Blaney's going to make a statement with Jonathan Hassler, it's going to be right this Saturday to get that win. So I'm looking for Mr. Blaney to, get those Blaneyaks getting wild over in Virginia.
Jonathan?
Mr. Blaney, very formal. Well, if we're calling them by their formal names, I'm going to pick William Clyde III, Mr. Chase Elliott. I think he's going to get it done at Martinsville. Of course, he won back in 2020 to get into the championship race. It's the old 24 team, and the old 24 team was amazing with Jeff Gordon back in the day at Martinsville. Chase has been really good at Martinsville. I think he's due for a win, has been quietly strong this season. I think he gets it done in Martinsville.
For sure. And those are solid picks this weekend. And there's a lot of contenders. And with this next-gen car, anybody, it levels out the playing field. But somebody, I think, is going to have a good weekend and pick up his very first win of the season at Martinsville. I'm going to go double deuce and go Joey Logano this weekend.
Pretty good.
I think that 22, we saw Team Penske kind of pick up their pace a little bit. And Joey Logano, I think, needs to have a statement win this week. He hasn't had one in a while. Yeah, he won the LA Clash. Yeah, he won Bristol Dirt, but we really haven't seen much out of that much out of the 22 team in the past few years. So I think Logano's going to get it done and show that 22 team is going to be a contender.
Yeah, he only has one win in the last 72 races, so or last 2 seasons, not necessarily 72 races, but one win in the last 2 seasons. So yeah, he's been very quiet.
I think Mr. Smiley's going to have to do it because he's now the leader at Team Penske with Brad K over at RFK. So if there's ever a moment for Logano to say, don't you worry, Penske fans, I can lead this team. You know that I am capable of getting us to the next step. Martinsville's the place to do it.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for the preview show this week. Before we go, you just recently released your latest episode of TPF Live, the Podium Finish Live, which you relaunched a little bit last year. Kind of tell us about what you and our preview show colleague and, of course, your assistant editor at TPF, Nathan Solomon, talked about this week.
Yeah, so we basically kind of recapped his experiences covering the race at Richmond, just because it was a really special weekend for him to actually experience kind of a post-pandemic race, kind of normal conditions again. Of course, looked at what happened at Richmond from the strategy standpoint, like we just did here on the previous show. And then we had a double billing for the hot seat interviews with William Byron and Kyle Larson, basically sharing that TPF car. And I don't think they crashed it, so we should have a good chance at having more guests on the hot seat. So really fun show. Be sure to check it out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And for the live editions, of course, catch it on WSBUFM.com, which is, of course, WSBU 88.3 FM, The Buzz.
We love college radio.
And of course,
oh, yeah.
St. Bonaventure radio station, of course, and of course, you can get it at the App Store, App Store, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. Jonathan, I know you mentioned it a little bit, but you talked to somebody cool this week.
Yeah, I got to talk to Sam Mayer. We had a really good discussion about his Xfinity racing, his racing career. Was going to ask him about Spotted Cow, but of course he is not 21 yet, so could not ask him about Spotted Cow. But we had a really good conversation, really good piece up on theracingexperts.com.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, you can check out this channel for all preview shows. And I just recently posted an interview with Bill Alberlin, of course, from BMW, Turner Motorsport. Really, really fun guest. Got his opinion on the Garage 56 entry for NASCAR, and of course, a bunch of other things. He's been around this business for a long time, so got a chance to talk with him. And thanks to my friends at Turner Motorsport for helping me out. I think we're going to try to see if we can talk to this person tomorrow. But look for, we might have Buddy Kofoid. I'm not sure. Of course, he'll be running for KBM, but and next week in the Bristol Dirt Race. So have him. We'll hopefully have that. But yeah, I got some cool stuff. Got some cool stuff this weekend. Just of course check out all these videos on there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you like what you see. All right. Thank you, Rob Tiongson, for coming on to the onto the preview show, making your preview show debut. And of course, we'll see this guy in the bottom next week. You never know who could be in the third chair or actually the second chair. I don't know. For everybody here, I'm Casey Campbell. Enjoy the race weekend at Martinsville. We'll talk to you next week to preview Bristol Dirt.